We are live.
All right, terrific. All right, welcome everybody to the Finger Lakes Regional Land Bank Corporation Audit and Governance Committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order. And first up is approval of the March 24th committee meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review? Are there any edits? If none, I have a motion to
I'll make a
accept.
motion.
Frank. And a second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes passed. All right, next up is the CEO President's Report. Joe?
All right, so we need to have these committee meetings every year. We are doing this a little bit ahead of schedule as what we've done previously in the past. Esther, our attorney, has gone through the Land Bank Act, our bylaws, and the AVO public authorities calendars and schedules for when things need to be complied by and all of that. So that's why we are having this meeting in this time in March instead of later this year, and why we did the audit in February and so on and so on. And the annual meeting on Tuesday next week. That was historically done in January to comply with all those things. We're doing it in March now. So this was the first year of doing it in this way, and we were able to pull together, I think, all the pieces that we need to just make sure we check all the boxes on all of those three different requirements and sources of requirements. Had a clean audit this year. They never come out and say you had a clean audit, but they said that they did not find any material issues or discrepancies or that kind of thing, which is kind of par for the course, as we've seen in the past. The audit this year was substantially easier on our end with the billing system that we have that Michael and Jill and Caitlin are familiar with, where we enter bills. There's an approval process and it tracks them. And then all of that gets loaded right up into QuickBooks. And all of that is then shared with the auditors. So in the past, the auditors used to pick 15, 20, 30 transactions that they wanted to investigate, part of their process. And what they would need is all the invoices, the canceled checks, everything associated with them. And we would have to go through and find them, scan them individually. And it was a lot of work. We didn't need to do that this year. It was much simpler. They got on, they only needed to ask for, 4 or 5 things instead of 40, which was much easier to manage. So another dividend from going with that system. But other than that, I think that's about it for the report.
That's pretty darn good. Because in the town of Seneca Falls, we use by the deal. We're always getting recommendations. Every audit.
All right then, and we will move to resolutions. So first up is resolution 25-1, readopt the acquisition policy. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second it.
Second, all right, any discussion?
No changes to the acquisition policy.
This is the same as it was last year.
Yes.
All right. Is there any additional questions? All good. All right, all those in favor of readopting the acquisition policy, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, carries. Next up is resolution 25-2, readopt the disposition policy. Do I
Make a
have
motion, we adopt the disposition policy.
All right, need a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
It is the same disposition policy.
And we're also appointing you as contracting officer again.
Yes.
All right. Any additional questions, input? All right, if none, then all those in favor of adopting the disposition policy, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, carried. All right, 25-3, readopt the investment policy. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion, we adopt the investment policy.
All right, I'll second this time. Any discussion?
No changes to the investment policy. During the audit process, our CFO asked about the letter that Bonadio provides. It's the same letter they provide every year. I did follow up with them. We don't need to do anything policy-wise or essentially anything like that to stay current with our investment stuff. But if we ever do want to open up a different type of bank account or something that would be considered an investment before we do, would probably be a good idea to review our policies and making sure if we do something like that, it's under our own policy and complies with the APO requirements and all that. But we're good for now. And for the investment report, we traditionally upload the letter from Bonadio to the comptroller's office that says we don't have any qualifying investments.
Any additional questions or input? All right, if none, all those in favor of readopting the investment policy, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, resolution carries. All right, next up, 25-4, readopt the procurement policy. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right. Discussion?
No changes to the procurement policy. We are discussing some that may come down the line eventually. We weren't able to pull it together for this meeting, but hopefully in the spring at some point, I think it would be worth having this conversation, whether we want to have a small group with a committee first or do it at the board, full board level, about ways to make this a little bit more effective for using for development type activities. One of the issues that we keep encountering is the triggering of the contract review clause. Every time we get a proposal from a professional service for something we already procured, we still have to prove the contract and all of that. So Esther's got some ideas of how we can clean that up, and we'll be looking at that in the future. But for now, this is the same.
So, Joe, are you allowed to spend $1,000 without board approval? Anything less than 1,000, or?
I think 1,000 is the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Is that enough money? I mean,
For now,
okay, for now, it's okay.
yeah, that's, for example, we need to hire an exterminator for rats and mice and stuff at 55 Washington Street. When we went to the village planning board for our site plan review, special use permit, a couple of weeks back, we got a lot of complaints from the neighbors that there was a vermin problem. And we are working on addressing that as we
Well, don't
move.
give me a house in that neighborhood.
Change
the plan.
Chief. We're working on addressing that, and that's one of the things. So Caitlin's been gathering quotes and all that, and 500 back in the day wouldn't have been enough. We would have had to go down to the board.
Yeah.
But 1,000,
$1,000.
we're looking at like 600, 700 bucks to do this. So yeah, I think that's an appropriate amount for taking care of some of these
As
little
long as
things.
you're happy with that, because there is, a month between each meeting, and if you gotta get things done, if you need a 1,500 or 2,000 or 3, now is the time to change it.
There are times, I think some stuff like that is what Esther is envisioning, because we'll get like a proposal from like an engineer or something that we were expecting it to come, but because of the way that I guess this industry contracts things, like every time they like sign on for a new service associated with a property or whatever, like it triggers a new little contract for them, which under our current policy triggers having to bring it to the board, where you've already seen it, you're aware of it.
You already
but
approved it,
You
actually.
already approved it,
But
but
not the specific contract.
it's just it's a quirk in how like the policy is set up that we're propelled to bring it to you anyway. That's what we're trying to clean up. And that's the biggest thing that's slowing us down on that kind of stuff.
And that threshold like kind of comes into play with that. But I actually think the fix is a little bit more like define, we use procurement contract for everything. I think maybe it makes more sense to have separate sections of the type of contracts. When we're doing this development work, those kind of contracts, like if the board gives broad approval on the project and knows how much it's gonna cost, the individual contracts underneath that shouldn't have to keep
Oh,
taken
okay,
off.
yeah.
Right.
Whereas the procurement contract, if it's something for the first time, of course you want the board to see it, and if it's an unexpected expense, we want the board to see it. But if you've got something that we had an original budget and we knew we'd have to do environmental, we knew we'd have to do this, that, and the other, like that would.
So if an original contract, then the only thing we would have to speak to is if there was a change order of more than 1,000 or whatever the language said in the contract, then that would come to the total board. But anything under that $100,000 contract, Joe would be able to administer, right?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm not trying to do it that way.
And once we approve the project for the total
Right.
amount, then Joe administers it unless there's a change order for a certain percentage of the total project, right?
That's what I sort of envisioned.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because if we have these broad discussions at the board, you know about the projects, you know what,
Yeah,
like what we're willing to spend the money on, we know where the money's coming from. And that's the other thing, we keep bringing contracts forward for money that's being expended from grants or from funding sources. We've done it like almost 3 times, like it's like over and over and over again. So I think the accountability is there and the public understanding of how we're spending this money is there. So that's not, we don't have any problems like that. It's just streamlining how we're gonna do it.
It's like a nuts and bolts mechanical problem. Like it's set up in this way where we weren't expecting this.
Yeah.
And getting an experience doing it and working with this type of professional, they set up these contracts that are set up in this way per task, not per project almost.
Yeah.
So when a new task comes up that they have to do, it comes with like the contract again. And then under our current policy, we've received a contract from a person and that we've already kind of approved, but because it's a new contract that we have to sign to get them to do this thing, we have to bring it to you to review the contract again. It's just.
To appropriate it.
or
Because
just
you
approve
can,
it.
you can sign certain contracts, but you can only sign them under a certain, with this amount of money, it triggers if you can sign it without bringing it to them to talk to them about it.
Right, and that's why you came up with the affirmation of spending funds or whatever the
Yeah.
name of the resolution was, because the board already decided that you were gonna do this, but in the middle of it, a new task started. We got a new contract and it had to come back for
And I'm
this
going,
contract review.
right, the plain language says you have to approve this contract, so I can't have Joe sign it without you approving it, but you've also already approved the appropriation before, so you're
Right.
actually just saying he can sign the contract you already told him he can sign, or something,
Yeah.
or that he could spend. So anyways, that's the problem we're trying to fix, but I think that's why, partially why it's not ready for this meeting, is because, it'd be nice to really be able for Joe and I to sit down, go over the contracts that have come in and take the time to go okay, what was the logjam here to make it really fit as opposed to just
so
try
anytime,
it.
you find the fix for this, we can vote on it at any meeting.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it here today.
No, I think
Oh,
the
okay.
question is whether you
All
want to discuss what Joe was saying, is we could bring it to subcommittee to discuss it and especially if Joe and I think maybe we need, want to work it out altogether, but the board could just vote to change the resolution anytime.
Okay.
The statute just requires you readopt these same policies every year, or we take the opportunity at the readoption to make changes, because we're
Oh, all
not here
right.
anyway,
Okay,
but you can do it whenever.
I'm good.
All right, we're good?
Yeah.
All right, then, all those in favor in readopting the procurement policy, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, resolution passes. All right, and if there's no other business,
I move we adjourn from the,
yeah,
not the
Governance
the
Committee.
governance committee meeting, yeah.
And we don't need to do the bylaws, right, Esther?
Nope, bylaws stand, we happened to change them last year, but
Okay.
they're not required to be readopted.
That makes sense.
So the agenda last year had them on it, but it's not.
Okay, well, now I am calling to order the audit committee. Governance Regional Land Bank Corporation. And first up is the CEO and President's report.
Following up from the previous president's report of the audit, we had an operating revenue in 2024 of $405,000, operating expenses of $353,000, and an income or loss $52,386, $2,000 less than 2023. But both of that, about 50,000, a little more for the operating income. What you'll notice is in 2024, we spent more than double the amount of funds at that time. So that's all of the LBI money. Now that we sorted out the environmental review process and we have professional services, and we're actually starting to get moving on these things. So we're seeing a lot more revenue come through, and eventually the operating income that'll start to come back as projects move forward and we get sales and developer fees and that kind of thing. But right now, it's all those professional services we were talking about, procurement, that we're spending to make, especially the packages with Flacker and Seneca Housing move forward. And as we discussed, I think it was a pretty clean audit. They went through and tested all of their identified invoices and expenses, and went through the books. And I am not an accountant or a professional in any sense in this way. So if Michael has anything to add.
Yeah, I think you addressed it with the letter.
Okay.
That was my concern, really. That stands as normal, that previous procedure.
Yeah.
Just redoing the same thing each year. I was concerned that we were gonna have to rewrite the whole thing.
Any other questions or input?
How are we financially then? We look like we're pretty good going into this year then.
Good enough. So we have the LBI funding, and we're working on getting through that with the projects. The actual money, that's our money, not grant money,
Exactly.
that kind of thing. That's that.
Grants are-
Yeah. So the nice thing is that the land bank in Seneca County lives in the planning department, right? We have the MOA. We don't pay rent. We don't pay for computers. We don't pay high salary directly. We do contribute to the county for it, but it's only a portion. So a lot of the overhead stuff, we're not going to get affected. We're not going to have those types of issues. So for $50,000 or a little bit of revenue right now, I think is okay for us, especially as we're passing through $400,000 in expenses to make this happen. We're expecting to get revenue off of the Seneca Housing projects and the Flacker projects at the appraised value of the land. So we got those appraisals. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. They were somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 a piece.
So that money will be coming back to us then.
That money will be coming back to us.
To add to that 50,000, 50 something.
Exactly.
Okay. This year, it should be this year, right?
This year, next year.
Okay.
It's dependent on funding awards and things like that, and then closing, and then we're gonna have to enter into some sort of agreement for both of them. The Flacker one will be simpler. The Seneca Housing one will be harder. But the nice thing is, as we're figuring out how to do all of this, the county, the planning department kind of are propping up the operation. So we don't have the same type of operational concerns with a lower revenue than, say, an independent land bank might have. The LBI funding is also, we use that for the audit. We use that to pay professional services, non-development, like accountants and attorneys. We use it for lawn mowing, and we use it for my salary contribution, and that also comes through grant funded. So we don't, so we have other expenses, like we're gonna pay for the exterminator out of just our general funds, but
I'm just wondering down the road how it will affect us obtaining property on the foreclosure list.
we can use LBI funding for acquisition.
So we don't have to use.
No. So that's what the next grant is for. And part of the reason I'm trying to responsibly move through that as quickly as possible, so we can apply for the next grant, know how much money we have to go to the auction and pay the market value or the assessed value, which you can use whichever one the county decides to do. We pay the county, and the county holds, they make their tax liens square or whatever. And then however the county is, this is not something I'm aware of what the decisions are, but
That's a
however
whole
the-
nother side of it
Yeah.
that is being worked on.
so we're gonna give you money.
More meetings.
We're gonna give you money for acquisition, whether it's market value or assessed value, whichever one.
You're gonna help with that part of it then with the appraised and the values and everything. How are you?
How am I involved in this?
Yeah.
She,
Oh, no, I don't, that's why I'm asking, because it's,
she's only involved on the land bank end.
Yeah, I'm gonna be involved in like us purchasing it.
But for the figuring out of like where you're gonna house the excess value for people to come claim it and like how, that's an Art James.
oh, no, I already know it's gonna be probably, Seneca County Court, the excess funds.
Interesting.
I know,
Because after, if you read into the laws now, after the foreclosure sale, everything actually gets turned over to the other half of it goes to county court. And they are responsible for the rest of it.
I'm sure they're thrilled.
Well, after I said that, they almost fell over, but they're like, what? And I said, yeah. Because now it's not gonna be, so just to let you know too, it's not, Judge Porsche, who's our Seneca County judge, is not handling any of this because he's not, I don't know why, but he's not doing that. So it's either gonna be the judge out of Wayne County, I think Williams or Williamson, or there's two out of Monroe. So our local judge is not handling any of this.
okay,
He can refuse to do it.
No, he's just not handling that type of stuff.
Oh,
I guess you could say that. I don't know what.
Yes, I guess to answer your question.
Yes.
that's a distinction. That's,
So yeah, so within the next, probably another month or two, we're gonna be having a meeting with
Bridge
county
this
court.
for me, I don't really fully understand county court taking the other portion, what do you mean by that?
Well, after we have our foreclosure sale,
Correct.
and then whatever the property sells for, during the auction, that money is then turned over to Seneca County Court.
It's like they're gonna escrow it as
They-
opposed to the county.
Yes, they
Will
hold
they?
the money because
Okay.
then they have to send the letters out, which I will probably assist them with information. They send the letters out to interested parties for that specific property. Meaning if you're a lien holder on it, or if you're the previous owner, if you're the owner,
They have to?
they have to.
Okay.
They send the letters out because now that person, if there's excess funds after the taxes are paid and everything else, they can claim it. It's like unclaimed
Oh, I
funds.
didn't realize. they
All this
could.
whole thing has changed.
I
It's
thought
like,
they couldn't, when did
the-
that?
it just changed.
Supreme Court a couple years ago.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
we
why
used
we
to get the whole,
right.
the whole
Right.
amount.
Yes.
now we don't get that. It's all changed.
Okay.
Because of our
Okay.
governor.
No, because of the Supreme Court.
Well, we all know. It all started with her. But now the excess, it's like unclaimed funds.
Right.
And then they have a certain amount of time afterwards
3 years, I think.
to claim this money. So now the money sits there
In the court.
in the court after, the taxes are paid, all the debts to us, whatever the remainder is. The court holds it and then they're
Don't sell
responsible
it
for
a
it.
dollar
So
more, right?
they have to claim it. And then if it's not claimed in the specified time, the 3 years,
Comes back.
it goes back, right?
Goes to you or goes to the comptroller?
That I don't know.
I think,
Then
I think it's supposed to go to the county.
This goes to the
I thought it
county.
was the county, I think, okay, so that's.
So this money was gonna be tied up for quite a
Sell your
while, so we don't
property
get,
for
so,
less than-
but,
Take a loss
but so
up
if
front.
the land bank doesn't want, if the land bank wants any of these properties, we have to pay
Full price.
full price for whatever it appraises or assesses for.
Not the deficiency.
Correct.
So the
The
deficiency,
deficiency would be the taxes owed, so on and so forth. We can't get it for that anymore. We have to buy, but we have
So we have to
to.
appraise it and pay the appraised amount, which will create the excess, in many cases, in some possible.
yeah,
So-
and there's
correct.
some strategies and things that we can work through. In context of the next grant, context of however the county's going to be handling this. I know Wayne County is pretty much got it figured out,
They do have it figured out?
from what I hear.
No,
So
see,
it might
that's
be
why we
worth reaching
waited.
out to them.
Well, that's why we waited for, we're kind of sitting back watching other counties do it. Ontario County's doing it right now.
Yeah.
They started it before us, the process, so we kind of piggybacked off them, with Jeff Trickler over there. And then Wayne County, they're kind of ahead of us on it, so I'm glad. If you get information from them that we're working with other counties to tag along with them in case the shit hits the fan. And then all of us we all did the same thing, basically, you know what I mean? So we can all stick together if something comes down the line.
So it changes, what it does is changes the calculus too. So when we in the past went to the board of supervisors and said the land bank would like XYZ of these
Yeah,
abandoned
right,
junk
right.
properties.
Good choice.
The auction would occur and the county pocketed the excess revenue and whatever loss they took from the taxes on what they gave us came out of the wash. That's no longer the case because there's no,
When we had our last auction 2 years ago, Seneca County pocketed $500,000. That's not gonna happen.
So what if a house, they owe 20,000 in back taxes, but
You know,
it's assessed for 80, but it sells at the auction, like auctions sometimes are funny, sells for 100,000, 20,000 more than it's assessed for.
then
Who gets that 20,000?
it's all put
it's all
in the
good.
court for the property owner to claim.
Oh, so whatever the auction amount is,
You know,
Is the
that's what the owner
market value.
gets.
Do we get the taxes?
well, it's taxes
And any fees.
So I consider
and the
them
fees,
empty for
which
3 more
is
years.
$250 for each parcel, by the
So
way.
it sits around empty
Or
for 3
there's
more
a
years.
percentage.
There's a percentage.
Yeah, but it's only, yeah, there is a percentage. But if you
And
look at the numbers,
Whichever is less.
no, it's whichever is more. I think it's whatever's more, but sometimes we're just, yeah, but who's gonna keep track of all that?
Right, so they have 3 years to
Just-
claim it.
You have to,
So they have 3 more years of an abandoned property while the money gets
So the
swallowed,
person
right?
who took title at the auction can move in. It's the money
Yeah.
that's sitting.
Right.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
So you transfer title, but you're holding the
Right,
proceeds.
that makes sense.
Right, I didn't know if you were gonna be part of the appraisal of the property, you know, if we were to, if the land bank is interested in a property.
Mm.
I didn't know on your side, because obviously the paperwork's gonna have to go through you, to sign off on and everything else, to basically close on it, whatever you
Well, I
wanna
guess-
call it, but are you gonna be part of the process
Well,
of?
we'd be part of the
The
acquisition for the
appraisal-
land bank.
So I think we need to decide if we're
Who's
gonna
gonna do
go.
all that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little premature right now.
Yeah,
Because we're not actually gonna we're supposed to have our foreclosure auction in August, but we're gonna have to probably push it more to the fall, like September.
What are the requirements to certify an appraiser? Like.
there's a regular role appraiser.
Right, but is there anything that the county needs to do to make sure that it's truly a third party? Yeah.
That's why I'm asking you.
That's
I'm just
enhanced.
bringing it up now because it's gonna happen
Yeah, I guess the question
I mean,
is
between,
where the appraisal's fitting in this. If you're setting it for auction, why are we appraising them at all?
Because the land bank properties aren't going to auction.
I see, okay. Okay.
So,
We're gonna offer that. I see what you were saying when you were explaining that. Okay.
you can either go under the state law, complying with the Supreme Court order. I think you can either go with a market value through an appraisal or an auction, which is a type of market, or use the assessed value on the tax rolls as the value. And I think under the way it is working in New York State, you can do that appraised value. So if we get a property, that's appraised for like $70,000 or something like that, that might make sense. That might be an easier way to go. But it might not. But I think we would just need to decide, or the county would need to decide how they want to handle that process. But the tax value, the property on the tax roll value, assessed value, that would be way easier in many ways.
So we're, the land bank will be taking property like under eminent domain.
No,
That's how they figure eminent domain stuff is, they look at either
Yes.
appraisals or the
Oh,
assessed
yeah.
value. And that's what, because at RGRTA, where they acquire land all the time to keep expanding, they take people's property and they either do it by appraisal or assessed value. So, I mean, the land bank will be doing the same thing. We'll be paying either the assessed value or the appraisal, whatever you decide on that, right? Les, is the county?
Well, if
We
we're
use-
buying it, it's the lesser amount.
And it can change each property.
Yeah, no,
I think
right, I don't know.
I think the
Whatever. That's, I just wanted to
I
make
think you're
sure
right.
that,
right, because a foreclosure and eminent domain is the government taking your property. And
For one's a sale, one's taken for their own use.
but government still has to do market value in that.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
So in what Frank is describing is like figuring out how
How to set the price.
we're gonna set the price, and it would make sense that those two things, you would arrive at that in a similar way.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes the person that you're taking the property from is allowed to get their own appraisal too, but somehow they work it out.
Mhm.
I mean, there is sometimes some negotiations in this too, and I don't know if you're gonna get involved in that or.
Well, the difference may be the eminent domain might be people who are on their property. Here, we've got abandoned properties, but I think if people figure out, I mean, right, so just the engagement of the seller at that point would be a little bit different. But yeah, I suppose they can't pay the taxes. I mean, that's what's an odd thing about it. If they can't pay the taxes and it's gonna go to foreclosure, but they aren't around, let's say,
Mhm.
then, they're hoping for a big sale price, because actually they can then go to the court and claim the overage that the county would have.
correct.
But I don't know that
The
happens
excess
very
funds,
often.
whatever.
We'll see.
Yeah. I just, my initial question, that's why I asked, how were we? So us purchasing property on the foreclosure properties, we do have money that would come out of,
We
not the
we will have
grant,
money.
but that
On
will
the next,
be
on the next grant, we're gonna put in acquisition costs. The grant doesn't care how we acquire them, but we'll have money to purchase them, so.
Okay.
I do like the idea of like a streamlined system to come up with how the land bank's gonna do this kind of purchasing from the county, like coming up, like, just getting that sort of in order. Which I'm sure you could think of, setting out how we're gonna do it and maybe try to make some of those decisions.
Yeah, so I think in the context of applying for the next grant and like establishing how much money we're going to be setting aside for this and all of that would be the time to try to map that out,
Yeah.
which should be relatively soon.
And we're still going after abandoned and vacant property, right? We're not gonna displace people. And then we've gotta try to find them an apartment or anything like that.
I've got one in my eye that's a 4-unit that's condemned, that's bad, and there might be somebody in it.
Really?
Is that the one Main Street Romulus? I thought there was.
No, I know what you're talking about though.
You're talking,
No,
I don't know what it is.
Impressive.
Okay, that's, I just drove by the other. last few days.
No, this one's
Okay.
in the village of Waterloo. So in a situation like that, it should be abandoned. And if this person is still in it, I think we will figure that out. We'll work with Seneca Housing, we'll work with IHS, who has done relocation things in the past, because it's
Unsafe to live there.
it's unsafe to live there. It should be abandoned.
Mhm.
Should be vacant. It's condemned. And it's a multi-unit in one of the villages that's been a bad rental for years. And that's kind of the direction we're going. It's very expensive as we're finding to build these things new. If we can find one that's already built and fix it, way cheaper, way faster, Seneca
Yeah.
Housing will run it or whatever. They can even move back in if they didn't go very far.
Well, what is county codes though? Don't they come and put that big circle with the big white or gold X on it?
Oh, yeah.
whatever?
Yeah.
And then when that happens, I thought no one could live in there.
They sneak back in.
What's that?
They get back in eventually. So,
They should not be there.
they should
Oh,
not
they
be.
should not be.
They
Even
should
with-
be.
But-
And then the codes department can't have them removed? They don't have the authority to like have that
Yeah, they
person
do,
removed
but-
from the, and then by the sheriff, no, I don't know.
Yeah, they do. But they
Um,
sneak in.
But they sneak back in,
Washington
huh?
Street.
Yeah, I don't think it's county codes like trying to manage that in that way, like that closely, would be an impossible task,
Oh,
right? Like there's so many of these out there, the stuff gets condemned every day. It might just be no heat, no water heater or anything like that, but I think this one's a little worse than that. Regardless, if there's somebody in it, when we go for it, if it gets all the way through the tax foreclosure process and comes up, I think it's worth going after, and if there's somebody there, putting ourselves in a position to work with Seneca Housing or IHS to figure out what to do with them,
mhm.
because those types of properties are rare, and maintaining them for the housing stuff is something we should be trying to do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe, like Esther, I think you said that we should probably develop some acquisition policy, right?
Or like, yeah, connect this to, well, I was thinking sort of like the flow, when we know we're gonna do these kind of acquisitions from the county, we can have some sort of like flow chart of how this works so that we can hit all the marks. And it may be part of the acquisition policy, this actual policy or not, or it would be, it's gotta follow that. So those two have to come together somehow, like our own policies and then like the practical way we wanna acquire these from the county.
Right, and that's what I mean. We should be a step-by-step process
Yeah.
that the land bank's gonna use every time they're going to, whether it's vacant land, you know, then if it's occupied,
And it's sort of like a
non-occupied,
decision
then
tree
we
and-
know,
Yeah.
you know, what direction to go and how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah.
When you do a grant or something, then you know how much to ask for, you know? I mean, you can look at the assessed value, hopefully. I mean, if the town if it's, like Seneca Falls, we were assessed for 100% now. I just got the
Yeah, well, the
note, I
equalization
just
rate.
got the note, now we're at 90%. And so then you'll have to make some adjustment, you know, if the
Yeah.
equalization rate is only 90, gonna have to make an adjustment on the price. So, I mean, there is mechanisms you can use when you do the, you know, they ask for the money from the state for grants.
so we're not gonna know what properties exactly we're looking at when we apply for the grant. It's
July 3rd is the last day to pay.
So I hope we have
Well,
applied well before that.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is just ask for a block sum, and say this is part of the
Okay.
budget, will be used for acquisitions. And
After that, Art gets stuff, the county attorney gets everything together, and then they go over to the court, then they go to court, or they go to the judge has to approve them.
If you had your eye generally on properties, then you can look at the assessed value and like generally have a ballpark. Plus, we're asking for much more.
So we're
We can
gonna,
get there.
we're gonna have time,
Yeah.
but we need a date. I think we need to have a date where we have something like you talked about, like a tree or something like that, where we can have a plan.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just letting you know what, like I said, we were talking middle of August, but I think we're gonna push it more into sometime later on
For the auction.
for the auction, but we should have something where it's like, oh, like
Prior to that.
by
we looked at
August
properties.
1st, we should have something in writing. Something down,
Right, for how the land bank's gonna get the.
right, it's something.
Yeah.
I would suggest something, at least, something on paper that we can, I mean, we can always change it, make a revise it.
Yeah.
But I think in
We
the
just start
meantime,
going through
we
it.
could,
right,
It
that's
could be
what I'm
like
saying,
a-
we can always change the game as we're going through it, but we should have something.
it could even be a letter, just a simple letters.
Right,
Land bank is proposing to acquire properties post foreclosure in this way
right.
when the time comes.
We'll have to find something to appraise or unless assess it or whatever. I don't know how we're gonna go about doing that.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, later in the game, but
Because we could potentially go the other way and use the
Right.
assessed value.
I think you have the option to provide that.
Well, you have to look at what it is and then look at it, because sometimes they might have been done how long ago.
I'm worried
If
about
the place is dilapidated.
I'm worried about
Right.
picking and choosing which way.
It's like a bank, if the bank is gonna give you a mortgage on something, the bank's gonna wanna go look at it to see if it's.
And they're gonna subtract what they feel is a contractor
Right.
value, what needs to be
We'll give you
made
80%
to
of
get it
the
up
amount
to
you're
a
looking.
6-month sale.
Correct, and that's what I'm looking at. I mean, I don't know
You know what some places are doing?
what,
Starting a vacant property registry.
yeah,
If you don't register your property, or you don't get it cleaned up or what you're supposed to do through this local law, your fines get added to your tax bill, so on and so forth. And that would increase the tax lien over time, so it would reduce the amount of surplus, I guess, at the end of the day,
right.
for these types of vacant properties.
More immediate cash to the county at the time of the sale.
Right.
Exactly. So there's,
It's new to everybody, and I
Yeah.
think everybody just wants to get through their
Have you
first
driven
one.
up 318 lately? Like, just go to 14 and drive between those two roads and count. I think there's 4 or 5 there.
on 318?
And count what?
Places that just look abandoned. I'm counting dentists
Oh.
too when I say that, but. I mean,
Yeah, junk around.
there's
property,
more of
everything
it
else.
than you think there is. Blackbrook Road,
Mhm.
is there a couple out there? I mean, counting Doves, there's 3 probably.
Right.
There's one down there from my mom that's.
No. If you are looking for a property to make a nice unpermitted pile of tires, Junius is a town that.
Gotta get the tire recycling.
Yeah. And we just had a conversation. We just had a conversation about this earlier this week, and I say that in jest, but it's something that the town is concerned about, that they're looking at ways to deal with and having conversations about this, addressing some of that stuff. And Department of State, how-to guides for junk regulations and rubbish regulations and things. That's what they talk about, pots, tires, and
They at least
garbage,
they
debris.
did clean up the one at Whiskey Hill, like the 318 Whiskey Hill. Like that was an Amish flip. Like the people emptied it. It was bought by an Amish
You
guy.
talking about where the demolition derby cards
Yeah,
are?
yes.
That one.
That one's been cleaned up pretty good.
Oh, it has?
Yeah.
I haven't been up there in a while.
Pretty good.
I think we can probably adjourn.
Did you
Do we
put on
need
the
the
audit?
motion on that?
Put on the audit to.
No, yeah, we
No, we
haven't
haven't.
done, we haven't done
We
this, so.
We have one resolution, right?
We have one resolution,
All that was relevant.
25-1,
Yes.
which
That was the most stating yet.
is to accept the 2024 financial statement and
I
audit
make a
report.
motion, we accept the
In second.
2024 financial statement and audit report.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, passes.
Make a motion, we adjourn. We can adjourn without a second too. We found that out in Seneca Falls.
I think we can.
You guys,
Okay.
reminding us the rules.
Yeah, that cost us a lot of money that last meeting.
Yeah,
I had a Wayne County
You know.
property 1 2 years ago.